The Hall of Convergence had been built to make individuals feel small. Its ceiling arched like the inside of a captured star, constellations shifting across transparent alloy as if the galaxy itself were pacing overhead. Every word spoken within it was recorded, translated, archived, and when convenient, weaponized. Erin stood at the center of the chamber, alone within a circle of pale light. She looked human at first glance. That was always the first mistake people made. Her posture was upright, her hands steady at her sides, dark hair falling over the high collar of her ceremonial suit. But her ears, long, elegant, curving past her jaw, marked her lineage unmistakably. Fine silver cuffs traced their edges, small luminescent threads running along the cartilage. They were sensitive, expressive. At this moment they were very still. Across the chamber, the sigils of the great houses shimmered in layered holographic tiers. Emblems of spiral crowns, burning suns, genetic helixes, and ancient beasts rotated slowly in the air. Each one represented fleets, economies, bloodlines older than many stars. Each one was about to turn against her. "Princess Erin Valoris," announced the Chancellor, his voice amplified and polished by a dozen discrete processors. "We convene to address concerns regarding your fitness to ascend." Fitness? Her left ear twitched once. "I was not aware," she replied evenly, "that loyalty to our own citizens was a disqualifying condition." A murmur rippled outward. Her auditory implants translated it into fragments, reckless, unstable human sympathizer. The sigil of House Thuron dimmed first. Its blazing sun flickered, then reduced to a faint outline. "We withdraw our support," declared its representative. "Your advocacy for frontier autonomy threatens core stability." "Translation," Erin said calmly. "I suggested that starving planets should be allowed to feed themselves." The representative stiffened. His translator lagged half a second before rendering her words into 12 languages, 3 of which added polite qualifiers she had not used. Another sigil dimmed. "House Korvax. Your proposals to integrate artificial star harvesting algorithms into fleet infrastructure are untested and dangerous." "Untested?" Erin tilted her head. "We have simulation data spanning." "Simulations are not tradition," snapped Korvax. "Ah," she said softly, "and tradition has always been so efficient." A faint, involuntary sound escaped from somewhere in the diplomatic tier. It might have been a cough. It might have been a laugh. Her ears angled slightly toward it. One by one the sigils began to fade. "House Velorin, withdrawn. House Iliad, withdrawn. House Meraxis." "Withdrawn," the Meraxis envoy declared dramatically, his many-ringed hands rising. "We cannot endorse a future guided by sentiment." Erin's gaze sharpened. "Compassion is not sentiment, it is strategy." "Strategy," he scoffed, "does not involve elevating humans into advisory councils." At the edge of the chamber, among a modest delegation in understated attire, a single human shifted awkwardly. Erin did not look at him. "Humans," she said, "have survived planetary collapse, climate inversion, and their own political systems. I find their perspective instructive." "Primitive resilience," someone muttered. "Is still resilience," she replied. Another sigil dimmed. The chamber grew darker with each withdrawal. It was a subtle effect, but cumulative. Light had always favored the majority. The Chancellor folded his hands. "Princess, your continued insistence on reform has destabilized confidence." "Confidence," she echoed. "In what? In stagnation." A ripple of displeasure vibrated through the tiers. House Thuron's representative leaned forward. "You were born to preserve the Empire, not redesign it." "I was born," Erin said quietly, "into an empire already decaying." Gasps, sharp and theatrical. Above them, the simulated constellations flickered as if reacting to the tension. Then, abruptly, a secondary delegate from House Meraxis rose to reinforce the condemnation, and his translator glitched. "We reject your leadership and instead propose." His voice crackled. 2 cups of fermented algae paste, whisked vigorously until fluffy. Silence, the delegate froze. His eyes widened in horror as his own words echoed back from the chamber's acoustic amplifiers in multiple dialects. Add a pinch of ionized salt. The translation continued helpfully, and bake at medium stellar output. For a fraction of a second, the Hall of Convergence forgot how to breathe. Erin's right ear curved upward despite herself. The human at the edge of the chamber pressed his lips together so tightly they nearly vanished. Technicians scrambled. The translation stream corrected itself with a flustered apology. The delegate sank back into his seat. The tension did not vanish, but it fractured, hairline cracks running through its polished surface. The chancellor cleared his throat. Let the record show that House Meraxis withdraws its support, without culinary amendments. A faint ripple of restrained amusement passed through even the higher tiers. Erin allowed the moment to settle before speaking again. "You fear change," she said, her voice carrying without strain. "You fear shared authority. You fear innovation that does not originate from your own bloodlines." "Our bloodlines built this empire," snapped Corvex. "And my bloodline," she replied, "is being used as an excuse to dismantle it." The final tier of sigils shimmered uncertainly. House Ealdrin, the oldest, the most influential, remained lit. Its matriarch rose slowly. Her image expanded, towering, dignified. "We do not question your intelligence, princess," she said. "We question your judgment. You align yourself with unpredictable variables." Erin's gaze shifted, finally, to the edge of the chamber. To the human. He stood very still, hands clasped behind his back in what he had been assured was an acceptable diplomatic posture. His formal suit fit well enough, though he looked as if he suspected it might bite him. Their eyes met only briefly. Then she looked back to Ealdrin. "Unpredictable variables," she said, "are often the catalyst for survival." Ealdrin's sigil dimmed. It did not flicker, it did not hesitate, it went dark. The chamber's ambient light lowered another fraction. The chancellor inhaled. "With the majority of houses withdrawing formal support, the council recognizes a suspension of your ascension proceedings." Suspension, a refined word for rejection. Around her, power shifted. Advisors avoided her gaze. Security drones recalibrated their proximity fields. Erin stood unmoving. Her ears, once held rigid, relaxed just slightly, not in defeat but in calculation. The galaxy had spoken, and it had chosen fear. She drew a slow breath. Then very softly, almost to herself, she said, "Good." The corridor outside the Hall of Convergence was quieter than it had any right to be. Erin walked without escort. The doors sealed behind her with a resonant hum, cutting off the low thunder of political aftershocks. Her steps echoed along the alloy floor, each one measured, unhurried. Servitors along the walls dimmed their optical sensors as she passed, unsure whether to acknowledge her rank or her rejection. Her ears caught whispers anyway. Suspended. Exiled practically. Humans. Her left ear angled back, then forward again. Let them whisper. A drone floated down from the ceiling, projecting a polite sphere of blue light. "Princess Erin," it chirped, "would you like a calming atmospheric adjustment? Lavender nebula scent is trending among deposed royalty." She did not slow. "No." "Chamomile supernova." "No." The drone hesitated. "Mildly judgmental pine forest." She almost smiled. "Deactivate." The drone dimmed, slightly offended. The corridor curved toward the residential wing reserved for foreign delegations. Her personal quarters, technically still hers, remained on the upper spire. She did not go there. Instead, she entered a smaller chamber with transparent walls overlooking the lower city tiers. Traffic lanes of antigrav transports crossed in luminous threads. Beyond them, orbital elevators pierced the sky like disciplined spears. A single figure stood near the center of the room, staring at a hovering display with intense suspicion. The human. He turned when the door sealed behind her. "I wasn't eavesdropping," he said immediately. "The walls here just vibrate with drama." "They are acoustically sensitive," Erin replied. "Right, of course they are." He glanced toward the ceiling. Everything in this building is sensitive. She studied him openly now. He wore the formal suit assigned by the diplomatic quartermaster, dark fabric woven with adaptive microfilaments that shimmered faintly. It fit him well, though he kept tugging at the collar as if expecting it to tighten. "You remained," she said. He blinked. "I was told not to move unless someone fired something. A practical guideline. Is that going to happen?" "Not today." He exhaled. "That's comforting in a very limited way." Silence stretched between them, but it was not hostile, merely uncertain. "You heard," she said. "Hard not to. The cooking segment was my favorite part." Her right ear tilted. "I didn't know fermented algae could be fluffy," he continued thoughtfully. "That feels ambitious." Despite herself, she let out a quiet breath that might have been a laugh. "They have withdrawn," she said. "I gathered. The ascension is suspended. My authority is under review." "Under review," he repeated. "That's bureaucratic for we're panicking, right?" "In this context, yes." He folded his arms. "So what happens now?" "Now," she said, stepping toward the transparent wall, "the Council will attempt to consolidate control. They will claim this is stabilization. Fleet commanders will receive quiet messages. Markets will fluctuate. Commentators will invent new adjectives for my personality." He joined her at the wall, peering down at the traffic streams. "You don't seem surprised." "I anticipated resistance," she said. "I did not anticipate such coordinated cowardice." "That's fair," he nodded. "Cowardice usually needs at least one brave person to organize it." She glanced at him. He shrugged. "On Earth we call that irony." Her ears angled toward him more fully now, attentive. "They object to my reforms," she continued. "To the Star Harvesting Initiative, to frontier autonomy, to your presence." "My presence," he looked at his hands. "I showered." "You advised on the Helix Station reconstruction," she said. "You questioned my resource allocation model. You asked for feedback. You disagreed without deference." He winced. "Should I have bowed more?" "Your attempt to bow nearly dislocated your shoulder." "It's a complicated maneuver," he muttered defensively. "Gravity kept changing." A small silence followed. "You are aware," she said carefully, "that aligning with me may damage your career." He snorted. "My career involved repairing aging fusion cores on ships nobody wanted to upgrade. Yesterday I was calculating coolant ratios. Today I witnessed an empire implode. This is already an improvement." "Not border patrols, core defense. They move without council authorization," Aaron observed. "They move under contingency protocol," Kale corrected. The human leaned slightly toward a nearby interface. "That formation is defensive, not offensive." Several heads turned toward him. Kale's eyes narrowed. "You are not recognized within this chamber." "Technically," the human said. "I'm standing outside the chamber's central jurisdictional ring." A drone floated down, scanning him irritably. Aaron did not look away from Kale. "Explain the movement." "A precaution," Kale said, "should instability escalate." "Instability," she repeated, "or descent." A pulse of tension tightened the air. The tactical display zoomed in. Power signatures along the fleet hulls intensified. "They are charging secondary arrays," she said softly. The human frowned at the data. "No, not charging, cycling." "Cycling," Kale echoed. "Cooling systems are running at 50%. That's not pre-fire posture." He glanced up. "It's nervous posture." A murmur rippled through the officers. Kale's jaw tightened. "You presume much." "I repair engines," the human said. "You can tell a lot about intent by how a system breathes." A brief silence. Then unexpectedly one of the hovering drones emitted a sharp tone. "Warning," it announced brightly. "Fleet synchronization error. Disco protocol activated." The tactical display flickered. The fleet icons changed color, bright violet, then electric blue, then a cheerful, deeply inappropriate shade of pink. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The human stared upward. "That's not me." Aaron's right ear curved slightly. "Override," Kale snapped. Attempting override, the drone replied. Current theme, celebratory. The chamber ceiling shifted hue to match the fleet display. Several officers stood frozen beneath shifting neon light. One junior aide whispered, "Is this a threat display?" "It is not," Aaron said. The human raised both hands. "In my defense, I have never programmed a fleet to glow." The drone recalibrated with an apologetic chime. The display snapped back to its sober tactical palette. Tension fractured just enough. Kale exhaled slowly. "This is not a game." "No," Aaron agreed, "it is not." She stepped forward within the circle of light. "You reposition fleets without authorization," she said. "You question my reforms. You frame innovation as instability." "We frame survival as priority," Kale replied. "And survival," she said evenly, "requires adaptation." The chamber held its breath. She turned then, not to the chancellor, not to the admiral. She turned toward the edge of the chamber, toward the human. His eyes widened slightly as every gaze followed hers. For a moment, the scale of the room seemed to narrow. "Throughout this proceeding," she said, her voice steady but unamplified, "my associations have been cited as liability." No one interrupted her. "You question my judgment because I seek perspective beyond inherited doctrine." Her ears angled forward fully. "You call it unpredictability." She took one step closer to the boundary of the central ring. The human instinctively straightened. "Tell me," she said, her voice quiet enough that the silence had to lean in to hear it, "if the galaxy refuses to stand beside me." A pause, then, "Will you?" For a fraction of a second, the entire hall forgot how to function. The human blinked. "Clarification," he said carefully. "Is this rhetorical, symbolic, or legally binding?" A suppressed sound moved through the chamber. Aaron did not smile. "It is direct." He glanced around at the tiers of officers, the chancellor, the admiral, the hovering drones that were absolutely recording everything. "You're aware," he said quietly, "that I fix engines." "You fix systems," she replied. "That's not the same as ruling an empire. Neither is inheriting one." A flicker of something passed through the officers' ranks. Admiral Kale's voice cut in. "This is highly irregular." "So is mutiny disguised as caution," Aaron said without turning. The human exhaled once through his nose. "Do I get time to review terms and conditions?" he asked. "No." "That's unfortunate." He looked at her properly then. Not at the chamber, not at the fleets displayed above them. At her. Her long ears were angled toward him fully now, attentive, unguarded in a way she had not allowed herself to be with anyone else in that room. "Well," he muttered, "this is going to ruin my quiet retirement plan." A beat, then he stepped forward, one step, across the jurisdictional boundary ring. A soft chime sounded as the floor registered the shift. Gasps followed. "I'm standing," he said. "For the record, I assume there's a record." "There is always a record," the chancellor said stiffly. "Good. I'd hate for this to become a rumor." Aaron remained still, but something in the air recalibrated. Not triumph. Not safety. Alignment. Admiral Kale's jaw tightened. "Princess, you elevate an outsider within a moment of strategic instability." "I acknowledge a partner," she corrected. "A human partner," someone muttered.